Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where Karens seem to think the world revolves around them and nobody else matters. And in today's episode, holy moly, you guys are in for a ride. We're dealing with psycho parents who overstep boundaries, and one OP reveals a secret to her husband after years of marriage that shatters his life. I hope you enjoy the stories today. Don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. I'm a 24-year-old female who married my husband, 28 years old, about a year and a half ago. The first time I saw my husband, I was a freshman in high school and he was a freshman in college. He was walking his dog at the park when he stopped to talk to my brother because they happened to go to high school together. And that was the moment I became hooked. That same day, I found his Instagram, his family's social media, and also where he lived, since my brother offered to walk with him home while I tagged along. When I got home that day, I knew I wanted him, that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him, but of course, I was only 14 while he was 18, so I came up with a plan. I found out that his younger brother was only 1 year younger than me and would be attending my current high school. I figured that I had to befriend his younger brother by any means possible next year when he moves up as a freshman while I became a sophomore, and I did. It took around halfway of my junior year where we became best friends, and he invited me over regularly to his house to hang out. This is where I was able to befriend my current husband's mom, and God, did she love to talk about him. From her, I found out what college he goes to, his past girlfriends, what elementary and middle school he went to, his favorite foods, his least favorite foods, his pet peeves, what he likes, etc., etc. Eventually, when my visits started getting more and more frequent, I formally met my current husband again. My current husband, who I'll call E, would often come home from college every other week and stay for the weekend. On those days, I specifically would wear my nicest outfits to impress him, and also joke around with him a lot. Eventually, I befriended him as well. And here's a little background on E. He's the school record holder for a certain sport at my school, which I just so happened to do. Around halfway through my senior year, E came back during the season to help coach the high school athletes, which included me. I got to spend a lot more time with him, and I loved every second of it. We were friends before, but then we became much closer since I got to spend lots of extra time with him after school, where sometimes he would even drive me home since we lived relatively close. So fast forward when I had to move away to New York City for college. E moved with me since he coincidentally got a job near my college, and being each other's only friends in a new state, we became incredibly close. We started dating when I was in my sophomore year of college, and he proposed to me after I graduated, and we got married almost a year ago. And here's the thing, he knows absolutely nothing about how I truly know him, and he believes it's fate that brought us together through his younger brother. Lately, I've been debating on whether or not I should tell him, or at least his younger brother, the truth, since the only reason I befriended him was to get closer to E. I just feel guilty every time he tells others our love story because the truth is, I've known him for 10 years, while he's only known me for about 7. Update. So I decided to tell him this 4th of July. After the fireworks mostly ended, we were heading back. And I asked him in the car, wouldn't it have been weird if we met each other before the first time we actually met? But we just didn't think of each other as significant at the time. At that, he smiled and then turned to me saying, "That's impossible. There's no universe where we would have met and I would not think of you as significant." Now that statement struck me in the heart because I knew I would soon prove that sentence very wrong. But I continued on with my plan anyways. I then told him, what if I told you we've met each other before the time I was introduced as E's little brother's friend? He, of course, looked at me like I was crazy. So that's when I pulled over on the side of the road and then pulled out my phone to show him the post I put up here before that explained everything. He took about 8 minutes to read the whole thing, and when he finished, he put the phone down and he just stared straight ahead, almost like he was dumbfounded, scared, and confused all at the same time. That's when I start throwing out every excuse and apology I could muster at the moment for about 15 minutes straight, and when he decided to tell me to stop, I did. Then he just sat there before finally asking how much of our relationship and how much of my identity was fabricated according to his liking. I told him the honest truth, that none of my personality or identity was fabricated for him, except for the fact of how we met. I also told him that although my friendship with his younger brother was built upon ill intentions, my friendship with his brother is now one of the most genuine friendships I have. At that, he cried. He told me he doesn't want a divorce at all, but he does want us to have some time apart, so he could absorb the truth I gave him. He also said he expects me to tell his brother and mom this Friday, because they deserve to know the truth just as much as he did. I told him, okay, and we drove the rest of the ride home in silence. When we got home, he hugged me and he cried for about 5 minutes before he got out of the car, packed his stuff, and said he'll be staying at a nearby hotel. He also told me that he knows he still loves me, but he doesn't yet know how to react to the fact that the beginning of our relationship was very, very orchestrated. So to sum it all up, I guess telling him was a success, but I honestly don't know. He sent me a good night and I love you text last night when he was at the hotel, so I guess he's not as much mad as he may be betrayed. Update number 2. I woke up this morning to find out that hubby not only lied about going to a hotel to stay at, but he also lied about not wanting a divorce through a text message. He went to his family's house, not an effing hotel. He told them the entire story himself, and probably exaggerated it too to make me seem crazy. His whole family wants nothing to do with me and claims I'm psycho for doing all that to trap him. He said that he lied about going to a hotel because he knew if he told me the truth, I would try to stop him. And honestly, I feel so betrayed. I tried to be a good wife by showing him the true me, and this is what he does. But honestly, I kind of deserve it. I get it. And here's the thing. I didn't even tell him in the first place because I felt bad. I told him because I had a suspicion that he was catching on to the fact that I knew him for 2.5 years before he knew me, largely because I found out he was keeping my old phone in his work desk. So I guess he never truly loved me if he can't get past an honest confession like this one. I might update this in a few years when I find a new husband. Guys, what a wild post this was, and honestly, I don't know who would take this news well, to be honest. And guys, let me know your thoughts. If you married the person whom you thought was perfect for you, and then one day they said, oh, well, let me tell you, I stalked you for 2 years before we met, I creeped your socials, and then hatched a plan to befriend your family members to get closer to you, and now we're married, isn't that cute? Like, are you letting the past be the past, or are you doing what OP's ex-husband did and pulling the divorce card? And here's another thing, it's just so funny to me that OP was worried that her husband would exaggerate and make up lies to his family that she was psycho. Like, there is no need to exaggerate. You tell the story how it is, and that's enough. Like, what could he possibly say to make her sound crazier, right? I also love the whole I might update this in a few years when I find a new husband. Again, guys, let me know your thoughts. So here's some backstory. I met my wife in high school and she was 6 months pregnant at the time. The biological father was a complete deadbeat. When the baby, who we'll call K, was born, deadbeat dad drops out of school and he changed his phone number to avoid having to care for a new baby. That said, by the time K was 8 months old, wifey and I started dating. We graduated together and we moved across the state to college and we went on with our lives as a happy little family. Fast forward 5 years. Out of the blue, deadbeat dad sends us a message on Facebook asking to have his daughter over for the weekend. Apparently he had gotten his new girlfriend pregnant and they rushed to get married. The new wife, who we'll call Psycho, wanted deadbeat dad to have his daughter back. And here's the thing, it had been 5 years. Kay didn't know him and we didn't know what to say at first. Out of curiosity though, we both checked out deadbeat dad's and Psycho's profiles and I nearly fainted. We found out that for over a year, Psycho had been collecting photos of Kay from anybody's profile that would share a picture of her. Not only that, she was posting them on her profile as if she was the one to take them. This included shots from a Mother's Day photo shoot that we had paid for. The photographer had posted some of the shots with her watermark on her Facebook page before we got the shots back. and Psycho copied them all to her profile, saying it was the best Mother's Day gift ever. We were scared and angry, but we found it best to ignore their request. And there was no way that we could get Kay to go along with spending the weekend at a stranger's house anyway. Well, after a while of ignoring them, they sued us for full custody and child support. And we're thinking, what the F? All hell broke loose when wifey was served papers at work. Immediately, we shut down our Facebook profiles and told all of our friends and family to take down any pictures of Kay. But that wasn't enough to stop her. It turns out, in addition to stealing photos, Psycho also made many fake profiles to add friends and family to get information about us. We never added anyone we didn't know, but other family members had. There were 7 fake profiles altogether. When we had them all removed and reported, Psycho started sending her friends and family to attempt to add us and gather more information about us. She even showed up at Kay's Christmas concert at school. And she somehow found out where my wife works and showed up to my wife's work. The reasons listed by their lawyer for seeking full custody were that we abuse Kay, never once in her life, and that we do drugs. Well, based solely on the fact that over 5 years prior, he had signed a VAP, which stands for Voluntary Acknowledgement of Parentage, deadbeat dad got visitation rights. Wifey retained primary custody, and visits begun slowly so Kay could get to know deadbeat dad. Eventually, it moved to every other weekend for the whole weekend. But Kay never made it the whole weekend. They made her sleep on the floor in the basement, so she never liked staying there for more than a night. The custody settled, and we opened a case for support. And of course, deadbeat dad tried everything he could to not be responsible for support. When he ducked out over 5 years ago, we never asked him for a dime. But they wanted all this, so we did it all, and you wouldn't believe the excuses he'd try. Even though they won, Psycho didn't stop trying to destroy our names online. She wanted the happy family, and Kay was throwing a wrench in her plans by not calling her mommy right from the get-go. One night, when Kay was at their house, we get the usual call to come get her. Only, it was Psycho's mom on the phone, and not deadbeat dad. When we get to the pickup point, Kay's in tears, and deadbeat dad hops into his in-law's truck without an explanation. It turns out, Psycho lost her cool when Kay didn't want to stay the night again, so she sat Kay down and read her the custody agreement line for line. She then looked that 6-year-old angel in the eyes and told her that she could have her mama arrested anytime she wanted to for not complying with the custody agreement. Psycho was convinced the only reason Kay wouldn't like her is because we told her not to. Well, for the next week, I have to basically force Kay onto the school bus in tears because she's convinced that when she's gone, we'll get arrested and I won't be there waiting for her in the afternoon. So thanks for that, Psycho. But this story does end with some poetic justice. Maybe they were tired of fighting with the little girl, or maybe Psycho realized how badly she messed up. Who knows? But before next visitation, we get this email from our lawyers explaining how deadbeat dad wants to sign over his rights and allow me to formally adopt Kay. It had only been 3 months at this point. We were ecstatic, obviously. We agreed and everything fell into place. Kay never had to see them again, and wifey and I could cold shoulder the online attacks. Life got back to normal and we began to heal, but their story wasn't finished. 2 weeks ago, I get a message from deadbeat dad's sister-in-law, who never really took part in the harassment. She's married to his younger brother, and they just had their first baby. She was hoping that we would consider letting Kay get to know her baby, since they're biologically cousins. But that's not the way we see family in this house. It turns out, the 3 kids that Psycho ended up having with deadbeat dad are no longer allowed to visit his side of the family, and Kay's the only biological cousin left. And here's why. Because deadbeat dad went to prison and Psycho divorced him, banning his entire family from seeing any of the kids. I will say though, after watching that Psycho do that to our family, I feel satisfied with her serving of karma. Some people are truly messed up in their heads, and thank goodness OP's daughter only had to put up with that for a few months, right? But seriously, how terrifying is that though? Like 5-year-olds are aware enough to know who they want and don't want to be around. so being forced to stay with Daddy and Psycho, whom she's never met until then, must have been a frickin' nightmare. I'm just glad to know that Kay never has to be around those people again, and that Psycho got a nice dose of karma that she deserved. Okay, so this happened a few years ago. My parents are the epitome of what makes an entitled person, and I've got plenty of stories about their antics. To sum it up quickly though, I decided that at 18 years old to run away from them and live overseas, where I am today and quite happy. This was the biggest decision of my life and I was nervous as heck. I had planned the flight about 2 weeks before the date, and my parents the whole time didn't think I'd go through with it. And to be fair, they only thought I was going on vacation for a short bit. Come the day, and after calling me an Uber to take me to the airport, they caved to save face and they took me themselves. When we got to the airport, I checked in and did all that good stuff before having to go through security. I waved my parents off and began to walk forward until the following goes down. I hear the security guard say, "Excuse me, where's your boarding pass? I only see one here," pointing at my boarding pass. This is when my mom says, "Oh, don't worry, we're just gonna take our daughter to the gate." Airport security says, "No, I'm afraid you can't go past this post without a boarding pass." This is when my mom loses it and says, "What? But she's our daughter. You can't tell me what I can and can't do with my own daughter." This is when security guy sighs and looks at me. I have a baby face, and I've always looked much younger than I am. Security asks my parents, "Alright, how old is she?" My mom just stammers and says, "Well, she's..." And this is when I say, "I'm 18, sir." At this point, my mom glares at me and says, "Shut up." Security tells her, "Well, she's an adult and she doesn't require accompaniment from her parents. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're not allowed past this gate." This is when mom says, "But she's not mentally 18. She's mentally regressed and she has issues." Hearing that, I'm shocked and embarrassed. I had depression brought on by my diagnosed PTSD. Those were my issues. Yet my mom worded it to make it sound like I was intellectually disabled. This is when Dad chimes in and says, "She's mentally a child. She still likes watching those Chinese cartoons," referring to anime and manga. Security tells him, "Yeah, I don't see how that applies here. She seems capable enough. Do you feel you can go through on your own?" I tell him, "Yes, I'm okay." And my mom screams, "Liar, just let me through right now with my daughter." Security sighs and calls another officer over. Security officer number 2 says, "What seems to be the problem?" This is when my mom cuts them both off and says, "This jerk won't let me go through the gate with my daughter, who's mentally ill." Security guard number 2 says, "What's the real story?" Security guard 1 explains the deal, and my parents are fuming. They can tell by the looks on their faces that they're not gonna get their way. And finally, my mom yells out the famously awaited Karen line. She says, "I know my rights. I demand to speak to your manager." So this is when a third person comes over, and the three of them are quietly talking together. I say, "Mom, Dad, this is going way too far. I'm gonna miss my flight if this keeps going." Dad says, "And whose fault is that? You should have booked a later flight. If you miss your flight, that's on you." Finally, the three of them stop talking and they approach us. Supervisor says, "Hi, I think we can make a compromise." Now, I'm not supposed to do this, but I'll allow one of you through with her, to sit with her for a bit. I could really get in trouble doing this, but I know how far she's going and I know it'll be hard. My mom reads her title name on her name tag and she screams, "I asked for a manager. You're not a manager, don't talk to me." Meanwhile, my dad's saying, "This is pathetic. Your proposal is also pathetic. How are you going to break up a nice family like this? Just let us through." The supervisor tells my parents, "I understand where you're coming from, but she seems more than capable and she's an adult. I'm breaking the rules by letting even one of you go through without a ticket, but that's my offer." And this is when my mom makes a huge scene screaming, "No, no, 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 this is ridiculous." And at this point, she's stamping around and waving her arms around. She even gets up close to the security officers who kind of eye her, and she immediately backs away but doesn't stop stamping. Security officer tells her, "Ma'am, I'm afraid if you don't stop, I will have to escort all of you away." Me, realizing he means me too, mutter an "oh crap" under my breath as I begin to panic a bit. This is when Mom says, "Fine, we'll just take our daughter home then." She then grabs my arm, but I quickly pull away saying, "Stop." Supervisor just looks at me and asks me, "Would you like a parent to go with you?" To which I say, "No, not really." He then says, "Okay, please keep moving then." I tell him, "Thank you," and that's when my mom reaches out to grab my arm, and she screams, "No, one of us will have to go through. OP, you like Wendy's, right? Let's go get Wendy's through here. Let me come with you." I just tell her, "No thank you." I then grab my suitcase and walk through security. My parents did try to follow me, but they're immediately stopped. My mom kept screaming, "Wendy's, come on, Wendy's OP, you love Wendy's." I don't look back. I got on my flight just fine and arrived in one piece. I then cut contact with both of them. Oh boy, I wonder how the parents took it when they realized OP wasn't coming back and cut contact with them. Like, they probably lost it. But this is what happens, and parents are oftentimes so shocked why their kids don't want anything to do with them when they turn 18. I just wish OP turned around, took one last look at Mom and Dad, and said to the guard, "They're not my parents, I don't know these people," before walking off and living their best life. And this person comments, "Here's a pro tip. Wait for your parents to plan a vacation of their own and schedule your leave for then. You can leave them a note or something. It worked for me." Okay, so I'm a 19-year-old female and I live at home with my family. My younger brother Mike is 14. He's got a group of friends in the neighborhood that he always hangs out with, and they all enjoy skating and longboarding and stuff. So that's what they're doing most of the time. The boys are 14 or 15 years old, and they're really nice kids, but most of their parents are hella weird. They have a group chat where they're secretly supervising the boys, basically constantly updating where they are in the neighborhood. My mom was added to the group chat, and she showed me the messages to have a laugh about it, and honestly, it's ridiculous. They'll send text messages like, "I saw them at XY Street 15 minutes ago," or "They were in our garden 5 minutes ago. I think they're headed to the skate park." I think it's hilarious because our neighborhood isn't dangerous at all. That said, one of the moms in the chat is especially annoying because she keeps calling our house and asking if her son Jake is there. We once were put in a group chat together for a church project, and since then, she's had my number and she texts me all the time asking about the boys because my mom won't respond. So yesterday, I was at home alone at about 2 p.m. because my mom was at work and my siblings were out. Jake's mom had called my phone 2 times, but I didn't answer because she was annoying me. My boyfriend then came over, and we were just in the living room talking, listening to music. It was nice and all, and peaceful, when suddenly I hear a really loud knock. It really made us jump because it was so sudden. I turned to look, and there's Jake's frickin' mom outside, knocking at the window, staring at us. I nearly hit the ceiling, I was so angry. I go outside, and she's all like, "Blah blah blah, sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to ask because I haven't seen Jake in 2 hours." She then bitched at me because we didn't hear the doorbell because of the music. So she said she had to walk around the house to investigate and look in the windows. I just blew up at her, saying she's a weirdo who stalks her son everywhere, and that she's a freak to look in other people's windows. I also asked her if her obsessive stalking was the reason for her divorce, which probably went a little too far. My boyfriend thought it was justified, and my brother thought it was funny. But my mom's mad at me because all the other parents are now blowing up her phone saying I'm disrespectful. She thinks I shouldn't have said anything about the divorce. I do feel sorry for putting my mom in this position, but I feel like someone needed to tell that lady how annoying her behavior is. So am I the a-hole? You know what, I honestly think that everyone sucks a little bit here, but I'm more leaning towards that woman being an a-hole. Like, should OP have bit her tongue and not said anything about Karen's divorce? Probably. Like, that was quite the low blow and had nothing to do with, her looking for her son. But should that woman have not peeked through people's windows and helicopter parenting her 15-year-old son? I think we can all agree she went a little bit extreme. Guys, let me know your thoughts. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's in our / malicious compliance episode, where a Karen boss forces an employee to obey her, and it goes absolutely sideways. Go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.